of a 12th century castle. Next. This is what we discovered. It no longer exists. It's collapsed. This was probably the winter capital of the Ghorid sultans who conquered Delhi in 1192 AD. Next. Just details of this wonderful archaeological site, of which these are now the only photographs and the only record. This is it, what we were able to take that summer of 1970. It's fallen down since.
Did it collapse due to the invasion or weather?
It collapsed because of neglect, of course. These, what characterizes this type of architecture, you can see, is the Mesopotamian tradition which the Persians and the Central Asians adopted. Even though there is a lot of good building stone, they build in brick faced with stucco or tiling. If this kind of architecture isn't constantly repaired, if left to the elements, the extremes of temperature will strip off the revetment and eventually everything just collapses.
Do you have any idea when it was last repaired in between the 12th century and when you took the pictures?
Well, given the fact that that particular kingdom collapsed at the end of the 12th century, it collapsed in 1204, early 13th century. I don't think it's ever been repaired since.
So it's just coincidence that you got there right before it?
Coincidence and tremendous luck. I mean, coincidence, we were looking for it. So, but we're glad we found it. Next. Yes?
I was wondering, that's the only thing left then?
Yes, this is Shahi Mashhad. Shahi Mashhad. There are bits of this left, but the great archway has collapsed, which is very, very sad. Next. This is a detail. This is known as a shansa, a sunburst. It's very sad that this should have disappeared after all, because this was the model, for those of you who know Delhi, of the great Quwwatul Islam Qutb Minar complex of the early 13th century Delhi sultans. This was their model. But you can actually see all the stucco work is just collapsing like rain. Next. A wonderful view of the great archway. Next. Another view of the archway. None of this exists anymore.
What year was that?
This was built in 1156 AD.
But the picture, when was the picture?
1970. Next. Okay, of course it's poignant to see art like this just gone. But this is only a fraction of the enormous archaeological heritage of the country, which has been either willfully destroyed or allowed to collapse through neglect. Next. More views of the archway. Next. Wonderful calligraphy in the archway. The Kalima Sharif. Next. Okay, this picture is taken from the other side of the river. We were at this wonderful monument, which we figured out was a winter capital of the Ghorid sultans of the 12th century, a great power whose reign extended from Herat all the way to Delhi, because now, or at least in 1970, the nomads actually had their permanent winter quarters right next to it. And in the summertime, they would leave for the cliff tops with their flocks. So actually, we followed the nomad route, and we were able to connect the site of the winter capital and the summer capital of the Ghorid sultans, Ghor, who traveled themselves like nomads between, well, you know these words, between the yaylaq and the qishlaq, between the summer grounds and the winter grounds. Next. The nomad boy, Pashtun. Next. His father. Next. Now, anybody know anything about camels here? Okay, what's the difference between a dromedary and a camel?
The number of horses.
Wrong.
Okay.
That's what everybody thinks. That's what everybody thinks. A camel is a camel is a camel, whether it has one hump or two humps. However, A dromedary means a riding and racing camel. And only one-humped camels are dromedaries. But not all one-humped camels are dromedaries. Got it? Two-humped camels are beasts of burden. So are many one-humped camels. Some one-humped camels are racing camels, as in aerodrome, hippodrome, if that helps. That's what a dromedary means. It's a Greek word for a racing camel. In Afghanistan, they have actually crossed the two breeds, one-humped and two-humped, so that you get an oblong hump right there. See that? Nomads. Okay, next. I'm sorry? Yeah, it was some advantage, yes. You're an extraordinarily resistant animal that could take any extreme of cold or heat, not drink for days, carry anything. Carry half a ton. Really, half a ton.
And these long hump camels are beasts of burden?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The Afghan nomads, unlike the Arabian Bedouin, do not use the camel as a riding or racing animal.
And they ride horses?
They ride horses, and, well, traditionally, for war, it was only the horse. For burden, camels, or donkeys, or pack horses. So here are the nomad route through the canyons. This is certainly an area that the Soviets never penetrated. Next. Oh, this is back to the winter camp of the nomads. It's hardly a camp. It's a settled village, really. You see it very, very clearly. But you also have the tents here. See them? Yes?
How is it organized?
I beg your pardon?
How is the camp organized, or the settlement? What's where?
What is where? Okay. The biggest building here, this one. This is probably, oh, I know, I had dinner there. This is the Khan's house. This is the men's house here, the Ujra. Here are ordinary houses. In the daytime, since it's very, very pleasant, even in midwinter at this altitude, the women go out and spend the day in the tent, where they can get air and light and weave, actually in better conditions than inside the house. This is the typical goat hair black tent of the Pashtuns. Other ethnic groups in Afghanistan use the Mongol type yurt tent, which we'll be discovering too. Here you have the, I think you call it in English, sheep cut, right? C-O-T-E, where you pack all the animals together so they can keep warm if there's a cold snap. Permanent waterway here. Next. Traveling along the canyon floor. Next. These are the autumn colors you get in the oasis that is going to form the market town that we're going to discover now for people from this entire area, and which is not a tribal zone. You have merchants and people from different tribes and different ethnic groups can shop. Whereas the village we had just seen was solely reserved for some Durrani Pashtun nomads, of whom somebody called Haji Sultan Khan was the lord when I was there in 1970. Next. Yeah, there's the market town right here. The traditional town or village, some fields, permanently irrigated fields, a little bridge, and here was the governor's house, the representative of the Kabul government. This was the one prefecture in Afghanistan just before the Soviet invasion, which still could only be reached by animal transport. That bazaar was supplied entirely by caravan. No car could make its way down into these canyons. Next. This is a view of the bazaar. You can see how stoic it is, how rustic. Just a hole in the wall to be able to reach the bazaar. That isn't very well focused, is it? But it should be. Let me see what I can do.